Hello. I'm doing this old school because, well, I just feel like it today. I haven't done a rant on a series or a TV show that I've watched in a while, so this might seem a little out of place, but I had such a visceral reaction watching this show on Netflix as I proceeded through it that I just can't help myself. Um, so I haven't done any grand research into this show beyond watching it. I just sat and watched in amazement as things proceeded through this story. So, if you have no interest in odd Dutch crime series from Netflix, or I don't know who produced it, either way, this might not be interesting to you. If you'd like to hear me rant about a crazy show, that might interest you. Either way, here we go. Keizersvrouwen, and I know I'm screwing that up. I don't speak Dutch. Or, as Netflix has translated it to, Women of the Night, is a series on Netflix that I believe only recently was added. It is a foreign series. If you do watch it, I highly recommend you watch it in the original language with subtitles. The dubbing is god-awful. But what is this about? Well, the title alone might tell you something. The English translation kind of gives it away. But even if the title from Netflix didn't do that, the first 3 minutes of the series would do that, because we get one of those instances where they show you a scene from later in the story to open up the series. So as we go on, we're going to eventually catch up to that moment. We don't get to that moment until the 5th episode, I think it was. But regardless, it's kind of like giving away the plot before you actually get there. The scene opens with our main character, Zandra Keizer, rushing into a darkened, home, apartment, condo, where her husband, just to make sure I don't mispronounce it all the time, I'm just going to call him Michael. It's probably Michelle or something, but it's Michael for ease of purpose. She rushes in and she's like, "I've got to find my daughter." And he's like, "My wife is running an escort service. What the hell is going on?" And she's like, "My mother has Hululu." "You mean the mother you said was dead?" And then cut to black and we go into the title sequence. And I'm like, what? It started out as like some crazy soap opera. And I thought, okay, well, this is the kind of show we're going to have. And then without any prompting that I noticed, we jump back in time by some measure of weeks or months or something to, I guess, where the story starts. And where does the story start? Well, we're at a celebration, I don't know, like lunch or dinner or gathering or something. And we slowly find out it's in this big, bright, public sort of glass, office space kind of thing. We gradually find out that Michael has just been appointed the new spokesman for the mayor of Amsterdam. I believe it's Amsterdam. And they call him a spokesman, which in my mind is kind of like a relatively minor functionary. But the amount of things that Michael is involved with and or becomes entangled with is so far beyond what I would imagine a spokesman would do. It's almost as if they turned his position at the city hall or whatever into a sort of, I don't know, Swiss Army knife or Dutch Army knife for the sake of the plot. But anyway, so he's being congratulated on being appointed as the new spokesman. And Zandra's there as the supportive wife, and she's sort of in celebration with her husband. There's all these people around, all these government officials and everything. And then this creep guy comes up behind her, and he says something like, "Hey there, I know what you really are." And he grabs her ass. And she, of course, has this sort of stunned look or something. And we don't know what's going on yet. We quickly find out what's going on because she starts flashbacking. She starts flashbacking to when she was, a teenager, something, and she was horribly abused. I mean, it's very, heavily implied in these little flashes of scenes and things that she was taken advantage of sexually and all these other things. And So she's having this traumatic, reaction to this. And I'm thinking, okay, wait, why does this guy know that? And what's going on here? So as Michael's up there giving this speech, sort of accepting his new position and all this, she's there getting accosted by this guy and flashing back. And then at the same time, she looks back and we soon to find out that her daughter, so on the screen, what you see right now, the blonde lady there is Xandra. The other ladies are different characters in the whole shebang, but her daughter, which I will show you now because I've got this whole thing. Now share audio. I don't need to do that. This is her daughter, Lulu. Lulu and her friend, Naomi, are also at this party, and they're dressed kind of like, as you see there, like grunge girls or something. And they're in the back of this party, this catered party, and they're mixing drinks. And they're just looking like a couple of lushes back there. And I'm thinking, okay, so I don't know what the age of consent or age of drinking is in the Netherlands or whatever, but this seems a little odd. And they're back there just making noise and having fun and mixing drinks together. And mom has to go back there and correct her and all this. And we get the fact that Lulu is a troubled kid and she's like into all kinds of crazy shit or something. Anyway, it's a lot of information. It's all kind of smushed together in this one scene. It all seems kind of out of place. Anyway, mom, after being accosted by this guy, starts flashing back to her life of terribleness or whatever and her abuse and all that. And she's standing in the back of the room, and there's a little like flame heater thing there to like keep, food warm or whatever. And she takes her hand and she just presses it on this heater thing in an act of self-harm to try to rid herself, at least momentarily, of the images and trauma of her youth, as her husband is up there giving his speech and accepting this position as the spokesman for the mayor. This is all happening in like the first 10 or 15 minutes. It's a lot of information, right? There's a lot of what's going on. I have no context for what's up. Okay. And sorry, I got an echo thing going on there. So anyway, what happens now? Well, over the course of this one evening, a friend of Xandra, this one evening, this one party, a friend of Xandra from her past suddenly shows up. This lady named Pam. And she and Xandra have some kind of history together. What is that history? I don't know. It's just revealed that she's there, and Xandra's surprised to see her there because Xandra knows that Pam is a madam. She runs an escort service. Now, how Xandra knows this? I think I figured it out later, but either way, they have a history together. Pam asks her to come help her. She wants to meet with her. She wants to, chat and catch up. Okay, fine. Xandra's a little hesitant. Xandra's got a checkered past. What this has to do with anything, we don't know yet. So Xandra goes off with Pam and they start having drinks. And Pam asks Xandra, who she hasn't seen in years, to assist her in curating a party where a bunch of escorts are going to be coming to, do their thing with a bunch of guys and all that kind of thing. And Xandra, from what little we know, is this straight-laced, tried to get her life back on track, has moved away from her dark past, has a troubled daughter, we're not quite sure what's going on there, and an obviously successful and productive husband. And at first, obviously she kind of goes, no, I can't do that. No, that's beyond the beyond. No. But over the course of an evening, for reasons that are never explained, she decides that, yeah, sure, I'll sort of put at risk my high-powered advertising job or marketing job, my relationship with my husband, my relationship with my daughter, and I'll go assist a madam with escorts, which is tangential to the kind of life that I escaped in my youthful abuse. The guy who accosted her and caused her all that trauma because of what she remembered of her life before, she's now going to willingly, with no inciting event, get back into. Okay. Sure. Why not? Okay, so she goes to this party and she acts as sort of the enforcer, the monitor or whatever. And Pam is completely incompetent. Pam is going off in the corner with all these, and she's like doing cocaine and having sex with one of the clients when she's supposed to be the one minding the girls. And so Zandra's there and she's actually minding the girls and she polices everything. And she's very, she's very businesslike about this. She's doing this very professionally, almost like she's done this before. Except at no point in the story do we have any idea that she was ever a madam. The chain of events for Zandra were, and I'll get to the other details later, she was used and abused. She escaped that life. She ran around for a while doing, minor sort of petty crime and other things and getting herself in trouble. She got in super trouble. And then this lawyer comes along who wants to help her. The lawyer falls in love with her. He gets her out of jail, puts her on the right track. They get married, and this is the life that they have. Was she ever a madam? No. Does she know anything about this? No. Why would she get into this, given her life and her history? I don't know. Anyway, so then Pamela, the would-be madam of this escort company called Bliss. And escort companies in, the Netherlands and Amsterdam aren't necessarily illegal, just like they're not necessarily illegal in the U.S. per se, unless you discover there's prostitution going on. Calling yourself an escort service implies a lot, but unless there's something criminal going on, it could just be people go out on dates with one another, that kind of thing. And I'm sure it's much looser than in Amsterdam and the Netherlands than it is here. Anyway, so Pamela runs Bliss. And Bliss has all of these women working for it from various backgrounds. We meet some of them. We find out one of them is she's a police officer, and she does this for fun. We find another one is some high-powered executive, and she does this for fun. Okay. And where am I going with this? so fun. Okay, so Pamela is involved in a criminal syndicate. We find out really quick there's a criminal syndicate going on that is selling all types of stuff, human trafficking and drugs and all kinds of crazy things. And this criminal syndicate is run by this old lady who comes to an abandoned warehouse where they have a table set up and a cash counter with a bunch of vans around, guys dressed in leather with guns and everything. And this old lady shows up in giant Hollywood sunglasses and a big white fur coat. I'm thinking to myself, Cruella de Vil is running crime in the Netherlands. Okay. It is so cartoonishly cliche. I mean, the first part of the show was kind of semi-grounded in reality, kind of. And then you come to this and it looks like Quentin Tarantino's 3-year-old son or something decided to write a script of what a crime movie looks like. And so you've got the old lady crime boss. You have her chief enforcer who vapes constantly and is called Pooh Bear. And she's bitching at him about something. And then they pull up, a car pulls up and the trunk opens and they have some kind of, a undercover cop that they've captured pull out of the trunk. And they throw him on the ground in the middle of this warehouse. And she basically kills him right there. She shoots him. If I remember correctly, kills him right there on the floor. And then she leaves it for them to clean up or whatever. And so what? Everything's happening so fast. Anyway, and just the thing, I'm not going to go episode by episode through this. I couldn't possibly do that if I tried. I'm just going to go through the narrative as we proceed and just sort of, this show so broke my brain. It's worse than The Fall. If you guys have seen my previous reviews at all, I got a whole playlist on them. There's this show from years ago that stars Gillian Anderson called The Fall. And that show broke my brain in so many ways. This is kind of like that. But so far, there's only one season. God help me if they put out a second one. I'll probably have to watch it. Anyway, so they kill this informant guy. And then we cut back to Zandra and the escort service. So now Zandra has helped out in this escort service. She's done a better job at it than Pamela. Pamela is obviously screwing up and getting all types of things screwed up by being on coke and messing around with the clients, and she's a mess. So much of a mess that she disappears all of a sudden because Pamela became a liability, because Pamela was going to be an informant to the police. And we meet our prime police officer, whose name I never found out, just a guy with a beard in the police office. And he's going to be the rabid police officer who's trying to take down all the crime in Amsterdam or something. Anyway, somehow, Sylvia is the old lady crime boss. And Sylvia has a mole in the mayor's office who's this. If you wanted to go to central casting and say, show me the slimiest, sleaziest individual that works at the mayor's office, this guy looks like it. He's got tiny little mustache, slicked back hair. He's sort of paunchy, and he looks very full of himself. And he was at the lunch meeting at the beginning with Xandra. And if I'm not mistaken, he was the guy that grabbed Xandra's ass. So we already know he's a creep. And surprise, surprise, he's also an informant to Sylvia, the crime boss, from the mayor's office. And so this guy, whose last name is DeWolf, he tells Sylvia, oh, there's this mole and she's going to talk and everything. So Sylvia has Pamela killed. Okay. And then Pamela goes missing. And then the guy, there's so many levels to this. There are three main crime figures in this. You got Sylvia, you got Pooh Bear, her main enforcer guy, and then you have this guy named Ralph. And Ralph is this tiny, weaselly little guy who apparently runs some kind or some aspect of the human trafficking business for Sylvia. It's mostly about human trafficking, taking girls from like Poland and places and then turning them into prostitutes or selling them off to places and that kind of thing. So apparently Ralph is Pam's boss. Ralph uses the escort company to launder money. Why you would launder money through an escort company, I don't know. Usually you want to launder money through legitimate businesses to keep everything, seemingly above board. But for some reason, the criminals of Amsterdam have decided that this escort company will be one of, if not the primary business through which they will funnel money and launder it. So Pamela's dead. Ralph finds out that Xandra had been helping Pamela on this one job. So now Ralph needs a new Pamela. So he goes to Xandra's work in public and propositions her with taking over for Pamela by giving her this phone. And this magic phone has all of the contact information for all of the girls, and it's like the one primary font of control for this company, Bliss. At her office, in front of witnesses, he goes to her and accosts her about taking over for Pamela, who is missing. Not yet known dead, but is missing and presumed dead. And Xandra's like, okay, all right. So in the meantime, Xandra also has Lulu, her daughter, her troubled daughter, who's getting into all types of trouble. Her daughter has just gotten cited at her school for trying to sell fake IDs. Oh my gosh, she's turning into a little criminal. So Xandra, in trying to scare her daughter straight. Now remember, Xandra, the former abused teenager, probably, I don't know if it's ever made clear that she was actually turned out as a prostitute, but it's heavily implied. Xandra, the former abused teenager, who is now deciding to become a madam, is also trying to scare straight her teenage daughter from a life of crime and, drug abuse and alcohol abuse and God knows what else, because Xandra has some experience with what that does to a person. So she tries to take her daughter to this addict shelter, this homeless shelter, emergency shelter for people in crisis kind of deal. And the lady who runs this shelter, she and Xandra have a past, a history, because we know that we find out that they're friends, or at least they know each other. And this lady cares about Xandra and starts alluding to things that she knows about Xandra's past. And so Xandra starts showing her daughter where she's going to end up if she ends up on this life of crime or life of, not taking responsibility and all this. Okay, great. we have some notion that Xandra spent some significant amount of time at this place. So you have this character who knows the dangers of the lifestyle of excess and crime and abuse and exploitation, who is willfully becoming a madam of an escort service while also trying to turn her daughter away from the lifestyle that she herself ended up in, essentially being forced to, but we'll get to that. Okay, so Xandra takes over as madam and runs a couple of parties, and we meet some of the girls involved in this, and one of them was kind of Pamela's second in command. Not official second in command. Her name's Christine, and she's very, controlling. But so she sees Xandra, who comes in out of nowhere, literally, to start running this thing as competition, because Christine has been there a while, been doing the escort thing, and been kind of helping Pam. But there was nothing on paper for this business called Bliss, which is kind of legal or not legal. So they start having some tension. I should say all of the little side stories with the women involved in the prostitution either go nowhere or become particularly bizarre. The only ones you have to worry about if you're watching this show are Christine, the sort of second in command, Anna, who is a fashion designer who decides to join this escort service in order to make money, in order to fund her, I don't know, fashion showing, gallery showing or something. And then BB. Now, BB is the really weird one. We'll get there eventually. Anyway, so while this is all going on, we start taking diversions to other characters, like Anna. Anna, like I said, fashion designer. She's got this loft thing. She's got these very crazy ideas. She's got this boyfriend who is absolutely in love with her, totally straight guy, straight as far as he's, straight as an arrow kind of thing. He's legit. He's not doing anything kooky. But anyway, so Christine tells Xandra that there's this new girl that she met or came across and might be interested in this because she applied to be in or something. So Xandra goes off to kind of interview this girl, Anna, the fashion designer, and she goes there and the boyfriend is there. The boyfriend knows that Anna is thinking about becoming an escort to make some quick money to fund her fashion career. The boyfriend isn't an idiot, but he is a cuck because he's totally willing, because he has no spine, to go along with this. Although he takes a moment in front of Anna and before Xandra leaves to confront Xandra and say, please don't convince her to do this. Because he knows what's going to happen. He has some idea of what he's going to have to sacrifice, but he's not strong or brave enough to actually confront his girlfriend about what she's doing. But that doesn't matter. No. So he asks Xandra, and Xandra's like, it's her decision. Okay, again, Xandra, the former abuse victim, cares about her teenage daughter going down a life of crime. Okay. So Anna's story basically is she decides to become an escort in defiance or not caring about, her relationship with her boyfriend, who's obviously in distress. She goes off to have her first client. Okay. And she goes there and she's driven to the spot and she gets out of the car and she goes up to the door, but she immediately turns back around and just is all nervous and all scared and just doesn't know what to do. And the driver, this minor character, this guy who's kind of their chauffeur all over the place, he works for the Bliss company. He calls Xandra and gets her on the phone. And Xandra's at home with her family who have no idea what she's doing. And Xandra's concerned about her daughter, right, getting into terrible things. Anne calls her in absolute distress. She's crying. She's scared. She's shaking. I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can do this. And Xandra, the protagonist of this story, standing out on her balcony on the phone with this scared girl who's about to do something that she can't, point of no return. And Xandra's like, no, it's okay. It's okay. You go home. I'm sure you'll find another way to fund your fashion thing. I guess, I guess what I saw in you, it's okay. It's okay. I was wrong. It is the most insidious, also blatant manipulation of someone in distress. And you watch Xandra, again, the protagonist, again, the victim of abuse, standing there on a balcony, talking to this scared girl, using reverse psychology on her. And as she hears Anna turn to changing her mind, Xandra gets this little smile of triumph on her face. She's sounding all concerned, but you can see her face. They can't see each other over the phone. And I'm sitting there watching this thinking, what a monster. What the hell is she doing? I was like, okay, I can understand an anti-hero. Okay, I love the Punisher, right? I can get a story where the protagonist is not necessarily a nice person. The problem is that like with so many other characters in this show, and most especially Xandra, the motivations make no sense. They do not flow one to the other. How can you have someone who is a victim of abuse, who gets PTSD the moment somebody even brings up the subject around her, has to self-harm to bring herself away from those memories, who will then become a madam, specifically exploiting and encouraging young women to go off and do the kinds of things that she was doing when she was young, and at the same time, she doesn't want her daughter going down that road? There's so many conflicts, so much hypocrisy. And I could understand it if it was like, rational hypocrisy, if that makes any sense. But it just doesn't make any sense. Anyway, so Anne goes off, has her first client. Everything goes, fine, whatever, for what it is. And now Anne's hooked, right? I'm going to go through these little storylines because trying to do it all in order is going to be screwy. Anne's hooked. She keeps doing it even after she's earned enough money for her show thing. She's ignoring her fashion work. Her partner in the fashion business is like all pissed off at her. And her boyfriend finally just leaves her. And she's fine with it. Little heartbroken, but she's like, it's done. Like, okay. So Anne has now turned into a heartless, whatever. And like, okay, I'm going to choose this life of high class escorting and all this. And who cares about the boyfriend? He disappears from the show, never seen again. And that storyline kind of dies for the most part. It comes back a little bit here and there. Anne quits at one point, but her quitting lasts for about half an episode before she's talked back into it. Oh, boy. Anyway, so what's going on here? Well, eventually, the cop who is rabidly trying to bring down all the crime syndicates in Amsterdam, well, he's surveilling Pam's funeral. All these people show up to Pam's funeral. I was actually kind of surprised. I was like, why are all these people showing up at Pam's funeral? I thought she was like on the fringe or something. She didn't have, they specifically said at one point that Pam didn't have friends. She just had the people that she worked with. But all these people show up. And lo and behold, Xandra shows up to Pam's funeral. And lo and behold, the cop is there taking surveillance photos. Now, he doesn't know somehow, even though Xandra's husband is the spokesman for the mayor, even though Xandra was at the dinner and thanked specifically by Michael for being his wife and helping him and everything, in front of all these people, all these officials, all these public functionaries, this cop takes photos of Xandra and has no idea who she is. But he takes photos of her. And people from the crime syndicate, Pooh Bear specifically, and Ralph show up at the funeral. Because, when a high-profile, criminal is found murdered, the thing you want to do as a member of a crime syndicate is show up in public associating yourself with that situation. And that's what you do. So the cop gets photos of Xandra with the other figures of this crime syndicate. And then later on, the cop is got the little, pictures up on the wall kind of thing, trying to figure out what's the structure of this crime syndicate and all this. And he brings in Michael, the spokesman for the mayor, to let him know what he's working on in this investigation. Now, why would the cop show Michael the specifics of the case and not just give him the breakdown for what's meant to be shown to the public to keep some kind of insulation or something? Don't know. But he shows Michael the whole wall of photos, and there in the middle is his wife. Oh my God, my wife was there? And he's like, he's looking at it. He doesn't say anything. He just says, this lady is working for them, and we think that she's laundering money. Right. Okay. Well, so Sylvia, the crime boss, the old lady crime boss that runs the whole shebang somehow, she eventually spots Pam's replacement. And she's like, oh, because Sylvia is Xandra's mother. The crime boss of the Netherlands or whatever. Because she lives in Antwerp, but all the stuff is taking place in Amsterdam. It's bizarre. Sylvia is Xandra's mother. And we flash back to scenes where Xandra was abused, tortured, junkied up, just totally, horribly treated by her mother. Her mother is a monster. And Xandra ran away from home to get out of this abusive situation. And I guess Sylvia was just always there, always living in the exact same house since Xandra was a teenager, running a crime operation. A crime operation that somehow Xandra has no idea she's involved with until these other guys show up, but at the same time also has no idea that her mother is at the top of this situation. So Sylvia, discovering that her own daughter has now become a madam of the Bliss Escort Service, which is the primary money laundering operation for her entire crime enterprise, decides to fuck with Xandra by contacting Lulu and saying, I'm your long-lost grandmother. Come and see me. And Lulu, who's mad at her mother because mom's trying to control her, decides to go off without telling her mom about this, of course. And so Sylvia starts insinuating herself into her granddaughter's life, unbeknownst to her own daughter, Lulu's mother, and starts showing her the kind of lifestyle. Because Sylvia lives in a freaking mansion. She's got all this money. She's all like, trying to tell her, oh, you do what you want. Who cares about these limits and everything else? She's sort of like the devil on Lulu's shoulder, right? She's trying to encourage her towards, the kind of lifestyle that she used to subject her mother to slowly. She's grooming her, as we see. It's very obvious. Lulu doesn't know the difference. She's mad at her mother. She wants to do her own thing. And we find out that, for a time, Lulu was separated from her mother. Why was Lulu separated from her mother? Well, because Xandra showed up at the shelter we saw earlier years ago, pregnant, but was in such a state with her drugs and all the other stuff that her child was taken away from her. And so for some, undetermined amount of time, Xandra was separated from her child, who I assume went into the system, and then she eventually got custody back of her child after she cleaned herself up and got with Michael. So that's why they're estranged. That's why their relationship is so rocky. She's trying to be a mother, but she's got this past. They got this separation between the two of them, that kind of thing. And throughout all of this, Sylvia, the crime boss, who's been operating out of the exact same house that Xandra lived in before she escaped, ne'er their paths have crossed in 15 years or something. Or whatever it was. Okay. But now Xandra's decided to become a madam of a money laundering operation for the Amsterdam mob out of the blue for no particular reason. But unbeknownst to her, she's working for her abusive, terrible crime boss monster mother. So Xandra finally seeming to realize what she's gotten herself into all of a sudden. She's handed a big suitcase full of money, and she's supposed to take this money to a bank to deposit it, I guess, into the Bliss checking account or something, and that's going to launder the money somehow, I guess. But at the last second, she decides not to do it and takes the suitcase of money back to her house and hides it, which makes all the sense in the world. Oh boy. So let's pause for a second. Let's talk about Ralph. Okay. Ralph is like the third rung down in this crime syndicate. You've got Sylvia, you've got Pooh Bear, and you've got Ralph. And Ralph acts like a big guy. He's got kind of a Napoleon complex. He always wears this really awkward beige, almost too tight kind of trench coat thing. He looks really goofy. But Pooh Bear is a big bully, and he bullies Ralph. And Ralph is trying to act all, gangster, but he can't really get away with it because Pooh Bear intimidates him. So Ralph's got sort of this inferiority complex thing going on. Well, he finds out that Xandra is Sylvia's daughter. Oh my God. And so he starts sort of coaching Xandra to help him try to take over the syndicate. Kind of. Because Bliss, this escort service, is so important to this crime syndicate that they're like warring over it for some reason. I don't even know why, but okay, it's the only money laundering thing they've got. So Ralph has a kid brother that he too does not want to get involved in all this stuff, but his kid brother keeps getting involved in stuff. And Pooh Bear knows that Ralph's kid brother is persona non grata in the crime business, but Pooh Bear goes to Ralph's brother, I think his name was Tito, and says, "Hey, Tito, I can't get a hold of your brother. Would you deliver this suitcase to this lady for me?" Because Pooh Bear wants to piss off Ralph, because Pooh Bear's a bully. So Pooh Bear gives Tito the suitcase of money that Xandra's eventually going to not launder. And he says, "Go to this lady's house," because he knows where Xandra lives. So Tito, the brother of Ralph, the crime boss or whatever, goes to this house where Lulu and her friend are sitting there just having drinks, because that's what they do. They drink alcohol all the time. And so Tito is kind of standing there going like, I have to deliver this to Xandra. And they're like, "She's not here." And he's like, "Oh, well, I'll wait." And I'm like, okay. And then Xandra shows up with the courier from the crime syndicate sitting there with her daughter in broad daylight with a suitcase full of money. I swear to God, this is the worst run crime syndicate in all of history. It really is. So then Xandra obviously gets ticked off that her real life and her newly formed criminal life is intersecting with one another. She gets mad at Ralph. Ralph has no idea what she's talking about. It was Pooh Bear that set it up. He says it'll never happen again. He gets pissed off that Pooh Bear was getting his brother involved in this, and he starts getting it in his mind, I need to take everything over because these guys aren't respecting me and that kind of thing. And what's Michael doing all this time? Well, Michael, the mayor's spokesperson, is doing nothing. He's just kind of a really nice guy who's being victimized without his knowledge by his wife, who's putting his entire career at risk, his safety at risk, his adoptive daughter's life at risk. But he has no idea. Like whatever. They're just having problems. They're distant. I don't know. So Xandra's running this escort business, and she's going to parties, and she's being the ringleader and so on, the enforcer. She's getting the girls, and she's getting them ready, and she's encouraging them, but she's also being a taskmaster and all this. And all the while, she's being this very serious sort of madam thing while she knows that she's involved in a dangerous criminal enterprise. Sylvia eventually convinces Lulu to stay with her. And so Xandra finally discovers that Sylvia is involved in this after a ridiculous amount of time where she should have known. And now she's worried for her daughter. Her daughter is being held by Sylvia. And Xandra knows what Sylvia is and what she will do to her daughter if given enough time. And so she goes to Ralph. And she says, "Ralph, they have my daughter." And he's like, "If I help you, you are mine now." As in, she works for him. And she's like, "Yes, whatever." And so Ralph goes with a whole bunch of guys with guns to Sylvia's mansion. It was at night, but it was in the middle of the street, basically. And they go up the door and say, "Give back Lulu, or everything's going to go crazy right now." And so Lulu, reluctantly and scared, doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't know anything about Sylvia. She doesn't know anything about the crime syndicate. She doesn't know that her mom's a madam, etc. She gets out, and now it's war kind of declared between Ralph and Sylvia, sort of. But it's a sort of Cold War kind of thing going on. So, good God. Where do we go from here? I'm trying to remember. Because it's so confusing. It goes all over the place. We go off on tangents with what the girls are up to in the middle of other things going on. Sylvia's running the escort service while at the same time trying to police her daughter, even though she doesn't know who her daughter is half the time, and somehow isn't worried about her daughter's welfare until it becomes necessary in the plot. Okay. We also discover that nearly every major official in the mayor's office that we have met so far, save for the cop, is making use of this escort services. The mayor himself has a couple of the girls come to his office at night for a dominatrix session. Christine is there, the second in command, technically, of Bliss, dressed up as a cop, you know, a naughty cop. And as the mayor is being ball gagged and strapped down to a chair on one side of the room, Christine is standing there with her smartphone, quote unquote, discreetly held up against her chest, taking photos of the mayor in the services of a prostitute. And we see Sylvia do this several times at different parties where she, quote unquote, discreetly, and I mean not discreetly, taking photos of clients involved in activities. For what reason? Well, insurance, I guess, blackmail material, obviously. It's never mentioned, it's never talked about out loud until later in the story when it suddenly becomes very vital. So the mayor is taking part of this, and he's also completely corrupt. The second in command, or the deputy mayor, or whatever the guy is, DeWolf in there, is obviously corrupt because he's giving information to the crime syndicate. He also makes use of the escort services, surprisingly enough. The only person who doesn't know any of this, has nothing to do with this, is Michael. Michael's like completely oblivious. He has no idea, like, what's going on. And he's completely somehow involved in these series of raids that are getting ready to be undertaken by the police in Amsterdam to try to rout out the corruption and rout out the businesses that the crime syndicate is using to launder money. Businesses that we've never heard of before. The only business that matters is the escort business. The one business that is suspect simply on the basis of what it is, that's the only one we hear about. We later on find out that there's a daycare that's being used to launder money, a horse training farm that's being used to launder money, a grocery store. We never heard about any of this for 75% of the series. All we've heard about is that this escort service is so vital, such the linchpin to their money laundering operation, that they're willing to go to war over it and turn Xandra into this pawn between crime bosses. Ugh. So anyway, Michael starts to get a notion that something's going on. Something doesn't make any sense. Xandra's becoming distant. There's a whole bunch of things going on. And then Sylvia shows up at Michael's house and introduces herself. And Michael's like, what? Because Xandra had told Michael that her mother was dead years and years ago. And he believed her. Why wouldn't he? Well, now he finds out that she's alive. And she finds out that she contacted Lulu. And Sylvia says, it's probably best you don't tell Xandra. It would upset her. And Michael goes along with this. He does not question this. Why not? I don't know. So, things start getting more crazy. Okay? If you can believe that. Anne, the fashion designer, who's decided to go all in on becoming an escort, she goes out on a date with a guy. Okay, they're walking along the boardwalk and they suddenly hear piano music, very beautiful piano music. And they just walk into this place where the piano music is coming from. What is this place they walk into? I don't know. Was it a music shop? No. Was it a studio? Maybe. Was it somebody's house? It looks like it. But anyway, at the piano, there's this red-headed girl playing the piano beautifully. And as soon as she's done, Anne and her date, this guy, we never see him again after this, they kind of go, wow, that was beautiful. And then all of a sudden, unbeknownst to us, there's another person in the room. It's the piano teacher standing off to the side who we never acknowledged, never saw. And the piano teacher suddenly says, no, it was terrible. I've tried to teach her, but she just won't learn. It's awful. And like for the next 3 minutes, we hear nothing but this music teacher in the most acidic way just dump on this redheaded girl and how terrible she was when we just heard her playing beautifully. I mean, granted, I don't have a musical ear, so maybe she dropped a key here or there. I don't know. But it was great. But so two absolute strangers walk into a place they're not even invited to, listen to a girl play the piano. All of a sudden, the music teacher talks to these strangers like they matter or something and is just completely denigrating and destroying this girl right in front of her to two complete strangers and then marches out. It was so bizarre. And then the both of them are like, Anne and her date are like, well, that was really mean. And by the way, this is Anne here for reference purposes on the screen. That's Anne. She's the fashion designer. And the girl, the redheaded girl at the piano is like obviously like in absolute distress. And she's like, no, she's right. I was terrible. She's very down and hard on herself. And she obviously has a whole lot of self-esteem issues and everything else. All this is happening in like one scene. And then Anne and her date are like, or the date guy says, hey, why don't you come with us downtown? We'll go to a party. And the girl turns around and goes, really? Me? And like, what? So again, two complete strangers walk into a house or something that they're not even invited into, listen to a girl play the piano beautifully. The piano teacher just goes absolutely apeshit on how terrible she is. The girl agrees how terrible she is. Then the stranger says, hey, come to a party with us. We don't know who you are. We don't know your name. We don't know your situation, nothing else. Hey, come to a party. So they end up at like this nightclub, this dance club kind of thing, where we find out that her name is BB. And BB sort of talks to Anne about what she's doing here. And Anne explains, well, I'm an escort. And BB's like, oh, because BB will apparently just latch on to anyone that shows her any modicum of kindness or care. And so now BB wants to become an escort. Just like that. BB wants to become an escort. So Anne, who's already seen the breakdown of her own relationship and everything else, okay. And then, of course, when Anne recommends her to Xandra, who now knows what she's involved in, has her own history with things, sees this completely vulnerable, malleable young girl wanting to get involved in this. And she's like, okay. And then gives her pointers and trains her and all this stuff. And like, what? And I know I'm going all over the place here, guys. But trust me. If you watch this show, it'd be the same thing. Because plot lines are picked up and paused, dropped off, never come back to again, over and over and over again in this show. Okay, so eventually, we get to the scene that opened up the whole show. Because Xandra discovers that Sylvia has her daughter when Xandra gets a selfie of her daughter with Sylvia. And so Xandra, well, I think I've already screwed it up a little bit because I'm backing up. She found out about Sylvia and Xandra. Oh my God. This show. Anyway, somewhere in there, we get back to the opening scene where Xandra suddenly says that my mother's got my daughter. And he's like, your mother who's dead? And she's like, yes. He's like, well, I find out that you're part of an escort service. And he doesn't do anything about this. He doesn't try to stop her or anything. Anyway, I think I've lost the plot. Not that the plot didn't lose itself somewhere along the way. Well, let me pick it up again, just for the hell of it. Xandra continues to be the madam of this Bliss organization, even though she knows from her husband that the cops know who she is and that they're investigating her, even though she knows that her mother is at the top of this chain because she's threatened by her mother, who somehow still has leverage over her to run this thing despite that. Even though her daughter's in danger, physical danger, she continues to do this. She quits her own job, becomes a full-time madam for this deal. And then we start getting into the high-class parties, the super-duper high-class parties where arms dealers and things are involved. She is in contact with someone named Marina, who is like some super madam of the entire European continent. And Marina has heard about Xandra. She was impressed by her and all this, and she wants her to help her with a party. So they arrange this big party with this completely ghoulish-looking arms dealer, and they bring the girls up on the stage in this, champagne-fluted, brightly lit servants of painted naked girls walking around serving drinks and things, and they bring the escorts up on the stage, and the craggedy, scary-looking arms dealer guy picks out BB. This is BB's like first real party or whatever. And so BB is taken to a room where there are 3 guys in robes waiting, and the arms dealer sits down to watch. And I hate to say it, this one scene was the best scene in the entire series. Okay, now I'm going to try to describe this lightly because it's kind of complicated. Almost no words are spoken in this scene. The guy sits down and he tells them to show me something. And so all the 3 guys, the 3 studs that are there, they start surrounding BB and start taking off her clothes. And she's looking terrified, right? And the arms dealer's looking at her with this very, judgmental look. But then, again, no words. You see this change in BB's face from terrified to control. Like she suddenly found her control. Looking at this arms dealer, trying to meet his expectations, she suddenly took control. And there's a complete change of character. It's very subtle. It's very good acting as far as I'm concerned. And likewise, as soon as you see the change in her face from absolute terror to, no, I'm in control now, and she levels her gaze at the arms dealer guy. And the arms dealer guy, going from completely mildly interested in what's going on, he sees this and his face reacts and he's starts taking an interest. Now, we don't see what happens with BB and the studs. They keep that off camera. But that moment of showing that connection between those 2 characters in this weird situation was the best moment of the whole series, because it said everything about what was going on between these 2 characters without saying anything. It was great. I was like, oh my God, if only the entire series was kind of like this. No. So, yeah. Anyway, Ralph comes back into the picture and he takes control of the escort service, and he has her sort of populate a party for him in this other place somewhere near the beach. And, the mayor's right-hand man, DeWolf, is there, etc. And Christine is still taking pictures, etc. And DeWolf, takes advantage of one of the girls or whatever. And Xandra's just minding the party. And Lulu has gone along with her mother on this trip. It was suggested by Michael or whoever, or Ralph, or I forget. Anyway, because Lulu's going to connect with her mother on this trip to Croatia. Of course, Michael doesn't know that the trip to Croatia somehow isn't involved in this whole escort scheme, but he goes along with it. And so now Lulu's in Croatia with her mother at some beach house mansion where a party's going on that her mother is arranging for the escorts. And then she sends Lulu out with Tito, Ralph's brother, to go just play video games or something while she runs a party. Well, and then they come back. Lulu and Tito come back from their afternoon or whatever, and Lulu sees a guy on a motorcycle, a guy that she saw at Sylvia's mansion when she was over there. And somehow, knowing that Sylvia is the bad person in this, Lulu calls Ralph to tell him that a guy from Sylvia's group is coming their way on a motorcycle. Ralph freaks out, everybody runs, and then there's a shootout in the middle of broad daylight right next to the dock of Sylvia's guys trying to kill Ralph and presumably kill Xandra, and Lulu's watching the whole thing. She recognized this guy as Sylvia's agent. She sees the shootout. She sees the attempted assassination of her own mother, relationship or otherwise, and Tito's brother, Ralph. And Xandra jumps onto a speedboat to escape with Ralph, leaving Lulu behind in all of that. And somehow, going forward, Lulu still feels it's okay to go hang out with Sylvia. But Ralph doesn't take that well. And so Ralph starts making noises about wanting to take some more power, and having threatened Sylvia with armed guards, Pooh Bear assassinates Ralph's brother Tito. Drive-by, just kills him right in front of Ralph. Well, what do you think Ralph's going to do? Well, Ralph gets a bunch of guys together, and he starts taking down the syndicate from within. He assassinates Pooh Bear, and he's going to be coming for Sylvia next. At the mayor's office, they're like, oh my God, a gang war has started. What are we going to do? And they're setting up all these raids. And Michael finds out that DeWolf is corrupt, and DeWolf starts threatening him with the knowledge about his wife and what she's up to and how this is going to ruin him and everything else. And Michael is just not sure what to do. And so he goes off to a bar, and Sylvia shows up and has, hey there. And by the way, Michael knows now what Sylvia is, and he starts talking to Sylvia. And he starts telling her his problems. He talks about the problems at the office. To Sylvia, the crime boss. Why? I don't know. Just because, that's what civil servants do when they find out that their wives are daughters of, international crime bosses in Amsterdam, who's already threatened their family and everything. So Sylvia has DeWolf assassinated. The guy who was threatening Michael in the office is now gone, and Michael gets a promotion. The cop, the super cop, the cop who's like can't be bought or anything, he knows about Michael's wife now. He's made that connection. He knows that Michael is... He doesn't say anything because, admittedly, he knows that probably everybody in the office is corrupt. He doesn't know who to trust. So Michael gets this promotion because of a guy's assassination. And then the police are planning raids. Again, they're planning these raids to start taking down these businesses involved in the crime syndicate. And so they have this meeting where they say, okay, we're going to do some raids, and here is the list and schedule so you know what we're going to do and when. And he gives a list to Michael because he's the spokesperson. Somehow he has to have the pre-knowledge of what the police are up to as the mayor's spokesperson for some reason. Okay, so DeWolf was killed by Sylvia on behalf of Michael. Michael knows this. And Sylvia has told him in so many words that she basically owns him now. So, you're going to let me know if anything's going to happen to my interests. So Michael's handed a list of upcoming raids of businesses that are going to be raided, right? What does Michael do with this list? Oh, well, I don't know what to tell you. He goes into the lobby of the city hall, takes a picture of the list with his phone, and sends it to Sylvia. Right. Okay. Now, can you imagine for a moment, besides the mistake he made by doing so, can you imagine the twist to that scenario? Can you think of it for a second? Well, if you hadn't, I'll tell you in a second. Anyway, so he takes a photo of this deal and sends it to Sylvia. In the meantime, Ralph is trying to take down part of Sylvia's operation because he, is now trying to take over the operation. He intercepts a van full of girls from Poland that were supposed to go to Sylvia's stable. And he basically lets all of them go or takes them somewhere else, except he pulls one girl out of this group of Polish girls for some reason and says, "You're coming with me." And I'm like, what is going on with this? Ralph decides to take care of this girl, and not in some kind of quasi weird, lecherous romantic way, actually take care of this girl. He gives her a place to stay, gets her cleaned up, gives her new clothes, arranges a passport for her to get out of the situation, out of the country. I mean, it is the most benevolent thing you can possibly think. And he does not ask for anything from her. She thinks that she has to put out for him for this, and he stops her. He's like, no. It's not about that. Just, go along with it. And he does this extremely kind series of things to her. Why? Well, I thought, maybe he's making up for Tito, or he's trying to do something good because of what happened to his brother. I'm doing all the work of writing the character motivations for the show, right? Okay. So while that's happening, Michael's caught having sent the photo to Sylvia. You know why? Well, because the list Michael was given was a list of all the places they did not raid. So they raided all of the places they meant to, and none of the places they didn't mean to. And the list that they gave to everybody but Michael said the opposite. All right? But they sent guys to check out a couple of those places, and they were clean. So they raided the places that Michael didn't know about. So Sylvia loses tons and tons of money from all these front companies and all this other stuff. And Michael's caught, right? Who could have seen that coming? Oh. So Michael's now in the shitter. He's caught having sent information to the crime boss. He's corrupt, etc. He threw away his entire career and everything to Sylvia for no reason whatsoever, knowing what she was, knowing what he was involved in, knowing what his wife was involved in. He did all that. Okay. Well, Sylvia comes to see him in prison. And Sylvia says to Michael, "You're going to give them Ralph in exchange for your freedom." Now, what does Michael know about Ralph? Nothing. But Sylvia gives Michael Ralph's name. And so I guess behind the scenes, where we don't see this, Michael name drops Ralph to the cops, says he can get Ralph for them. And what happens to wrap up the Ralph story? Ralph sends the Polish girl off with her new passport. The girl is all cleaned up. She's all dressed. She's got a bag. She's put in a car. She can't believe it. She sees that this is real. This isn't a trick. She's not being taken advantage of. She's not going to be whatever. She's free. And she runs back to hug Ralph. And Ralph doesn't know how to, he's like, oh, surprised by this. He's like, doesn't experience affection like that. She kisses him on the cheek, runs back to the cab, and they drive off. And so Ralph has done this amazingly benevolent thing for someone who has murdered a bunch of people and has let a whole bunch of other girls become slaves otherwise, but this one girl he helped out, and okay. He turns around from sending this Polish girl off, and standing there is Xandra. Xandra, who at this point in the story has outwardly defied Ralph. He's already threatened to kill her for something else that she did, but Xandra's just standing there out of the blue. We don't see her arrive. She just walks up. And she walks up to Ralph. Ralph, who is now trying to become mob boss number one. He's already killed Pooh Bear. He's already taken away some of Sylvia's girls. And he's feeling all right, but he's out in the open all by himself in the middle of the day. Xandra comes up and says, I'm just here to tell you I'm not working for you anymore. And I'm not afraid of you. And Ralph goes, you're not afraid of me? After I killed Pooh Bear and my own brother died and I shot up this thing and I did this, that, and the other, and you're not afraid of me? And then Xandra's like, did you get all that? Xandra was wired. Why was Xandra wired? I don't know. Why would the cops even think to trust her? Because they know her involvement in the whole thing? I don't know. But she was wired. Ralph just out and out just confessed to multiple crimes right in front of her in the span of about 15 seconds, and then the cops suddenly appear from out of nowhere and arrest Ralph. And I'm not kidding. This is how it goes down. It is the most thin, horribly written, cliche-like, you see it from a mile away coming. So, Ralph's now gone. Michael's not out of trouble yet. Okay. But in the meantime, Xandra and Michael break up. Xandra, he just can't take it anymore, and she's obviously out of her head. Xandra is now negotiating with this Marina super international madam lady for jobs and things. And Marina tells her that there's a job that she has to do over, I don't know, in Paris or something. It's some big high-class clients who are going to pay hundreds of thousands of euros to have girls show up. Well, Xandra now suddenly is worried about her daughter because her daughter had a fight with her and her daughter decided to go out on her own and cut ties with mom, and she has to be on her own. Mom's like, okay, well, if you ever need anything, call me. And so Lulu goes off literally into Nowheresville in Antwerp looking for this guy that she met through her grandmother briefly, and she doesn't know what she's doing. She gets assaulted, accosted by these guys, robbed. She runs away. Then one of the guys turns out to be nice and brings her stuff back, so there's no consequences to what she did. And then she's all alone, and she calls her mom for help. But mom's not there because mom's busy with having sex with Marina, the super madam of the whatever, because I guess that's what Xandra does now. Okay, so anyway, then Lulu gets back in the arms of Sylvia. Sylvia takes her, and because Lulu's got nowhere to go because her mother's not answering her call. So now Lulu, once again, knowing what Sylvia is, knowing that Sylvia tried to kill Ralph and her mom, so on, goes back to Sylvia. And Sylvia shoots her granddaughter up with heroin and starts making her into a junkie. She's going to start using her. She's going to try to sell her off into slavery to try to spite Xandra. So Xandra's trying to get back to her daughter and find her daughter, get her back from Sylvia and everything. In the meantime, there's this job on the other side of the planet or something, or in Paris or whatever, that she has to task Christine with undertaking because she's not around. She's trying to find Lulu. So Christine takes Anna, the fashion designer, and Bibi, the piano-playing psychological mess, off to this remote mansion somewhere in the middle of nowhere. And lo and behold, whose mansion is it? It's the craggy arms dealer from before. Now, how is this information introduced to us? Okay, the two the girls, Christine, Anna, and Bibi, are all out by the pool. They're just kind of waiting to find out where's the party, who are their clients. They don't know. They just know there's a lot of money involved. Christine's there just to sort of chaperone. We're introduced to the fact that this is the arms dealer's place by suddenly BB notices and looks up at the window in the mansion, and there, standing in the window, is the arms dealer. Right? And next to the arms dealer is a Doberman pincher. Now, the arms dealer at multiple times has been quoted as being into weird stuff previously. So if you see the arms dealer who's into weird stuff that we already know he likes to watch, and he's standing next to a dog, what do you think is going to happen? Well, I had an inkling. Oh, God, I had an inkling. Do I need to spell it out? BB gets taken upstairs. The arms dealer's treating her all like very gently and everything and all this other stuff. And then he blindfolds her, and then you hear the whining of the dog in the background. I'm not kidding. Now, you don't see it, obviously. You don't see it. Thank God there's nothing to see. But in the interim of things, knowing that it's the arms dealer, knowing that the guy is kind of scary, Christine and Anna get all freaked out, and they try calling Xandra to try to get this to stop because BB's in trouble, but Xandra's too busy trying to get her daughter back. So Michael, in a last-ditch effort to try to avoid jail time, he offers up that he will meet with Sylvia and set her up to be arrested. He'll be wired, the whole 9 yards. Because somehow, throughout all this, Sylvia doesn't already know that Michael's been arrested. I don't know how she doesn't know that, but she doesn't know that. So Sylvia arranges with Michael to meet him at some place that night. Well, at the same time, Sylvia is attempting to sell her drugged-up, heroin-addled granddaughter to a white slavery guy. But when the white slavery guy sees Lulu, the white slavery guy who just paid for a whole stable of Polish girls that have been kidnapped effectively and turned into slaves, he takes one look at Lulu and says, "She's a minor. I don't deal in child trafficking." And I'm like, what? Like, you just bought 12 Polish girls and you don't well, I guess it's good you've got standards, I guess. So Sylvia, upset that she couldn't sell her granddaughter to the ethical white slavery guy, injects her granddaughter again with drugs and leaves her in this like ratty, like, I don't know, garage or something up offside of the mansion. Xandra has discovered, if there was any mystery, where her daughter is. Goes there with a crowbar and somehow sneaks around this place with all these guys and criminals around to eventually find her daughter. And she finds her daughter all drugged up, and she goes to her and tries to lift her up. And then Sylvia's there, and Sylvia takes a hold of Lulu, and she's got a gun, and she's going to kill Lulu in this revenge thing against Xandra for, running away and this, that, and the other. And Xandra, at one point, slaps Sylvia across the head with the crowbar, knocks her down, gets Lulu behind her. And then Sylvia, dazed, pulls up the gun and fires a shot. And it hits a can of, I guess, oil or some kind of accelerant that just starts pouring out of this can. And then Sylvia gets back to her feet and starts coming towards Xandra with the gun. And then Lulu says something to her that kind of distracts her for a moment. And then Xandra steps forward, grabs the gun, turns it around, boom, into Sylvia's stomach. Sylvia falls to the ground. And then Xandra tells Lulu to go away, get out of here, go to safety. And then Xandra takes out a lighter, lights it up, and sets Sylvia on fire with the accelerant. And then walks out. Now, Michael and all the cops are arriving at the exact same time for this meetup where Michael's supposed to be wired up and meeting with Sylvia and basically setting her up for arrest. Okay. But they show up just in time for not that to happen, for this fire to take place. Lulu's already there. She runs to Michael. Xandra's there. The cop is there. All the guys in the criminal syndicate are arrested. They find out, I guess, Sylvia's dead. And then we cut back to Michael, who confronts the mayor with the phone that has the videos on it of the mayor making use of prostitutes. And so the mayor's like, what do you want? And Michael's like, I just want to be left alone. And then Michael's let off scot-free from being an informant for this crime syndicate. Xandra never ends up being in any trouble whatsoever. Lulu, I guess, is now safe and well with Xandra and Michael. Oh, what about BB? What about BB and the arms dealer and everything? Oh, well, after this incident where BB is forced to have sex with a Doberman pincer, the arms dealer is so impressed with her that he says he wants her to stay with him. And BB, being an absolute psychological mess, who will latch on to anyone in any authority who shows her any kind of kindness or respect or any kind of encouragement or anything that seems like love, she decides to stay with the arms dealer while Christine and Anna are freaked the hell out, and they leave her there at this mansion with this creepy, scary, disgusting guy. This vulnerable girl is now going to be his sex slave something, but she's doing it of her own volition, I guess. And then our closing scene or so, well, Xandra's still running Bliss, and she's at a party with some of the girls, and Michael shows up and is just kind of like, hey, what's going on? And she's like, ladies, this is Michael. He's mine. And then she takes him out on the balcony and they kind of, kibitz about whatever's going on. I have no idea what Michael's doing now since his career is ruined and everything else. But then Xandra gets a call from Marina, the international madam, and she's like, hey, I want you to come to whatever and meet me. And she's like, oh, how many girls should I bring? It's like, oh, no girls, just you and me, to have a lesbian love affair, I guess, while she's standing on the balcony still with her husband, who now believes that they're together again. And then she looks out on the city and the music rises and the credits roll. This show makes no sense. The character motivations make no sense. The chain of events make no sense. And the only reason I kept watching it was to find out how much less sense it would make as it proceeded. Everybody gets away with it. Nobody has to deal with it. Our main characters never have to face any consequences to their actions whatsoever. Our main character is a hypocrite, contradictory monster who will push girls into a life of effective servitude and exploitation, despite the fact that she once was one of those girls, despite the fact that she's afraid of her daughter becoming one of those girls, but seems to have this switch in her head that she can just turn on and off, depending on if somebody's calling her about setting up a job versus somebody calling her, telling her that her daughter's kidnapped. She can care enormously about the fate of her daughter in one instant, but then be, like, oh, well, how many girls do you need for this party in the next? The criminals are stupid. The cops are stupid. Everybody in the mayor's office is corrupt and nothing happens to them. On and on and on and on. I didn't even show half the pictures I downloaded of the characters in this show because I got so distracted with just talking about it. But yeah, well, I mean, if you're curious to know, so just so I didn't waste my time completely with that. This is Ralph. This beige coat thing that he wears all the time. It's ill-fitting. Let's see. This is Sylvia, for anybody else's reference. That's Sylvia. Yeah, and she always wears those glasses and this fur coat. Like I said, Cruella DeVille. Blind Press, thank you so much for the, well, Hollywood glasses girl. Kind of like Sylvia here. Appreciate it. Oh, is this not showing up? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not putting the, oh, wrong screen. I apologize. Okay. There's Pooh Bear and there's Sylvia. Okay. There's Pooh Bear and there's Sylvia. Pooh Bear who's always vaping. There's Michael. Michael, the husband, the nice guy. Here's Sylvia all by herself. Just for reference. I mean, if you need to know, like I say, here's Ralph. Sorry, I didn't show the Ralph thing before. Here he is. Yeah. And the only picture I could find of BB on the fly was this one. This is DeWolf. This is the other corrupt mayor official, and this is BB. I guess I forgot to mention that he was her first client before the arms dealer, and he wasn't any good either, except that it was kind of weird. He like told her to get out of this life. This life isn't for you, etc. after he made use of her. Weird. Anyway, that's my rant. I just need to get it off my chest. This show is amazingly terrible. Amazingly terrible. But it was like a train wreck, you know? I just couldn't stop watching. I was like, what the heck are they going to do next? And I guess that's it. I'm going to scroll through the chat real quick in case anybody said or asked anything. Keeverdam, was Lulu the villain the whole time? Lulu was the idiot the whole time. I mean, like, they set her up as some kind of like street smart mini version of what her grandmother effectively was instinctually, and yet she's too stupid not to know that walking around at Antwerp in the middle of the night all by herself without any kind of protection for herself and walking up to a bunch of strangers on the street who look like they are probably not up to any good is a good idea. Going back to her grandmother, who she knows just attempted to assassinate somebody with a shootout, motorcycle drive-by stuff, is a good idea. The stupidity in this show of the characters and their motivations and their logic process is so blah. Mr. Tickle Trunk. Oh, Anne isn't there, like I said. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, like I said, let me get back to that one. Oh, wait. No, I did show that one with Anne and all them. Yeah. Okay, it's gone now. But anyway, that's my review, such as it is. Luke Skywalker 2. So no TED Excellence today since you did this. TED Excellence will be tomorrow with Blind Press. Duo 1 with Blind Press. So look for that tomorrow on Sunday. Keeverdam, I asked that when you brought up the twist. Yeah, no. The twist was the list that was given to Michael was a dummy list to test whether or not he was the mole, which was about as you could see that coming like freaking Halley's Comet. And where does this go? Is there going to be a second season of this show? I have no idea. All the bad guys are dead. Sylvia's dead. Ralph is arrested. I guess he could come back somehow. Pooh Bear is dead. Michael is off the hook for everything forever because he has blackmail material on every city official in the frickin' Amsterdam. And Sylvia's still fine running a escort service. I guess now she's not technically connected to a crime syndicate, but they always were, and the business had been laundering money for some indeterminate amount of time prior to Xandra being there, but she's okay with it. And still pushing these girls into situations where they might end up psychologically destroyed. And there's a couple other characters on the girls, the escorts, that I didn't even talk about because they go nowhere. But there's another girl that they show for a while who has this propensity to fall in love with her clients, and they don't love her because they just see her as, well, a prostitute. And she goes insane, almost kills herself, instead tears up a bunch of men's suits, and then we never see her again. Yeah, all these side plots that make no sense. But anyway, that's all I have to say after an hour and a half. But yes, keizersvrouwen, or Women of the Night on Netflix. Abandon all hope, ye who enter there. If you do watch it, because I only gave I laid out a lot of the events, some out of order, but a whole bunch of stuff I didn't even bother to mention. If you do watch it, by all means, watch it with a friend or two and get ready for just absolute insanity as you try to follow along. I'm not going to say it's so bad it's good, because it's just frustrating and it's bizarre. I think about the one other Dutch crime franchise that I've seen, and that's called the Pusher Trilogy. Nicholas, and I'm going to screw up how I pronounce this, Nicholas Winding Refn, the guy who did Driver, if you ever saw that. His first set of movies, or at least his early set of movies, was called Pusher. There's Pusher 2, and Pusher 3. And the first Pusher movie was the very first appearance on film of Mads Mikkelsen. So long before Mads Mikkelsen became the superstar that he is now, I saw him as Tawny in Pusher. And Pusher is a great movie. Do not watch the British remake from 2011 or something. I don't even know what it was. Do not watch that. It's terrible. The original Pusher movie is one of the best crime movies in my library, as far as I'm concerned. The subsequent movies, Pusher 2, and then Pusher 3, I Am the Angel of Death, they're good. But the first Pusher movie is like a classic as far as I'm concerned. Great. And it takes place in the Netherlands, in Copenhagen, and all that kind of stuff. So as far as like Danish crime films go, I thought they had it down, or at least they had a model to go after. This one, anyway, I'm going to call it there. Everybody who joined me for this, I apologize. I apologize that I put you through this if you listen to all of this, because this is basically me just getting this off my chest after I watch this thing. Again, if you decide to watch it, please do with a friend. Don't do it alone. You might be in for some mental health problems at the end of it. Regardless, thank you for joining me. Thank you for your participation, though this is mostly me just sort of pontificating. Thank you so much for your generosity, Blind Press, and all of you at all the other times, of course. If you would like to hear more from me or Satsu 2 Cents or the Ranting Monkey, you can find all three of us tonight on the Ranting Monkeys channel for The Lords of the Night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, where we will talk about the news of the day, news stories you submit, what we've been up to on the internet, and then your questions and comments. Everyone, again, thank you for joining me. Those of you in the future listening to this, I hope you enjoyed it. I'll add it to my playlist. But like I say, as far as the Netflix series, keizersvrouwen, or Women of the Night, let the buyer beware. And with that, everyone, as always, thank you for watching.